Hello, my name's Dr. Eric Grigg, and this is my brief talk about early medieval dikes and warfare, based partly on my PhD thesis and my book. What period are we talking about? Well, roughly 450 to 850, so after the Romans. In England, think Anglo-Saxon times, but before the Vikings turn up is the early medieval. Now, I studied the dikes of early medieval Britain, and there are a lot of them. There are also, some of them are quite big. Some of the biggest archaeological monuments in Britain, over 100 of these possible early medieval dikes, and if you put them all together, would stretch for 279 miles. That's from equivalent of London to Dublin or London to Aachen. And some of them are huge, are absolutely massive, which causes a problem because it really skews the figures, because three of the top four earthwork features in Britain are Roman, but one of them is Offa's Dyke, and Offa's Dyke is massive. So when you start averaging out the size of them, Offa's Dyke skews it up. So I started looking at medians. So what was a typical type of dike? So half of them I found 1 to 2 miles long. It would have taken less than 100 people to build. You've got a ditch, you usually have a bank uphill. Sometimes they make a marker bank before laying it out. Sometimes you get a berm or a revetment. Berm is a flat bit between the bank and the ditch to stop the bank falling in the ditch. And occasionally you get ankle breakers in the bottom of the ditch. This turns your ankle sideways and breaks it, or could be used as a cleaning slot. There's three main theories of why they're built. Controlled trade, but there's not really enough trade in this period. Marking frontiers or creating unified kingdoms. This is the trendy one, or possibly a military function. Now, the popular present is demonstrating power in the landscape, and we think of Offa's Dyke as, making the border between England and Wales and defining Englishness. And it does get quoted in Welsh law codes, and it creates a sense of us and other. So if you've got a very mixed group of people, it unites them together building the dike, demonstrates the power of the king in the landscape, and it all sounds very terribly postmodern, this theatre of kingship in the land. But it only really works for Offa's Dyke, or possibly Wan's Dyke, but even there it doesn't seem to work, because West Saxon documents don't even talk about Wan's Dyke. Only a quarter of these early medieval dikes from the same alignment as parish boundaries, and boundaries get reused in the British landscape. So if they were borders, why are they not reused as borders? Because I found exactly the same figures for prehistoric earthworks. Most Anglo-Saxon estate boundaries ignore them. We have these charters, and they describe the border of an estate and say go up this hill, turn left, go down by the river. Most of the time the dike cuts straight across the estate, and on your right there is a picture of the black line is the estate boundary of Stanton St Bernard in Wiltshire, and the green line in East Wan's Dyke that slices straight across it. Now, this estate was probably laid out after the dike and yet ignores it. It's mentioned in the charter, but it just says you go up to the dike and straight across it. The estate boundaries don't follow them. So what if they're military? Well, I kept getting told, no, they can't be military. There's no fighting in this period. But if you look relative to other periods, there is more evidence in this period of violence, of axe or sword marks or arrow marks on skeletons dug up from this period than any other. Most of them block root waves. These are the Cambridgeshire dikes, and on the clay there would have been forest, the alluvial would have been marsh, and this light green line marks a line of chalk where there would have been open grassland, and this ancient rootway, the Icknield Way, that gives you access to East Anglia from the Midlands is cut by a series of dykes. These aren't borders because a border's not moving. These are this defence in depth. These are multiple route blocking dykes, and no one's found any concrete or material decent evidence for any gateways in any of these earthworks. They are slicing through Roman roads. Oh, there's been no finds related to water dykes, I was told. Well, when I started collating all the archaeological evidence, apart from the whole broken loom weight and a couple of Anglo-Saxon sherds in the bottom of a dyke, I kept finding again and again and again reference to bodies. Oh, this would be dismissed. Oh, so the 100 skulls at Offa's Dyke, oh, that's to do with a Viking raid. And the bodies at Branditch, oh, no, that's an execution cemetery. That's not a massacre. Well, it included a baby. And you've got multiple burials there. I think it's still credible that that was a massacre. And time again, weapons were coming out of them. So I think we've got to think seriously about whether they had a... They're often hard to find. If there were demonstrations of power in the landscape, they're often set back from the crests of ridges or down the corner of a valley, so you wouldn't see them until you got near them. But there's often a large hill nearby that would give you views, so you could put a beacon up on that hill, warn your people to gather at the dyke. They're often set back from where we think the borders of a kingdom would be. So as the enemy raids, you can man the dyke. So let's model how this would work, and I'm afraid I did this during lockdown, so I couldn't access the model shop, so a towel and some model railway surplus equipment is all I had. So post-Roman period, or the late Roman period, you get more and more grazing, less and less arable. So we've got a Roman road going from one kingdom to another, people grazing their cattle, and people from one kingdom attack on a raid. People often went to battle on horseback, but they generally fought on foot. And raids need to be quick. You need to get in and out quick. So a Roman road or a ridgeway will give you access deep into enemy territory. So they escape back with their cattle, and you find at sort of strongholds in this period, you often get evidence of feasting on cattle, and nicking the cattle means that the place that you're raiding, they'll be weakened anyway, they'll be starving next year, so easier to duff up in your next raid. So people started blocking these routeways with earthworks, and that's how tall that they would look relative to the size of the people with a ditch and the bank. The ditches are usually 2 meters deep and the bank's 2 meters high. These aren't hedgerows, these are massive earthworks. And the great thing about this, because if they're farmers defending their land from raiding warriors, farmers are going to be scared. You want to keep the enemy at a distance, and you want your farmers to not run. So they keep the enemy at arm's length. You can throw spears at them, you can fire arrows at them, you can keep them at a distance and hopefully scare them away. Anglo-Saxon swords are quite heavy, so they're used for hacking downwards. And the balance point is quite a way down the blade. Useless if you're fighting someone high up, but rather useful if you're hacking someone who's trying to climb up this muddy ditch and bank. Now, what if they try and outflank you? I was told, oh, this would be easy to outflank people. You stand on the ditch, stand on the bank, and you'll see people moving to one side or the other, and you can send some troops to block them off. The ends of these dykes are often in either marshland or sometimes sea inlets or sometimes in woodland. What if you went round them? Well, they don't have an Ordnance Survey map. They wouldn't know how long this bank and ditch went on for. They'd have to send scouts round there, and you end up in the woodlands where the locals hunt, and they're going to start hunting you. Raiding in all cultures, you want to get in quickly and out quickly. So that's my book. Got some nice reviews. Hate to say it myself. And check the book out if you want to know more about these massive earthworks that spread across Britain, and the role they may have played in the creation of Britain. Thank you. Like, subscribe and share.